Hey guys, Phone Arena here, and this is the Sony Xperia XZ2, Sony's latest flagship phone. It looks a little different, doesn't it? While previous Xperias were flat and boxy, this new model introduces a brand new design, with curved shapes and shiny surfaces. It is also packed with an HDR display, the powerful Snapdragon 845 chip, and a camera that can shoot HDR video. But is this phone really worth getting? I spent a week with it to find out, and there were many things about it that I liked. The new metal and glass design, for example, looks great in person. This is definitely a modern-looking phone, but it doesn't look flashy. Resistance against water and dust is still present, so the phone can be safely used in the rain, for example. On the downside, the phone isn't particularly compact. Even the LG G6 and the Galaxy S8 from last year had screens of the same size in smaller bodies. It is also quite thick and heavy. This phone feels very solidly built, which is a good thing of course, but the combination of its shape and weight make it unusually slippery. One thing that Sony has kept is the dedicated camera button on the side. One thing that's missing, however, is the headphone jack. About that fingerprint scanner at the back, the good news is that it will work even on the US model. The bad news is that it isn't placed in the best spot possible. It should have definitely been positioned a little bit higher, where the user's index finger would naturally rest. The LCD display on the Sony Xperia XZ2 has an extra tall 18:9 aspect ratio. Choosing this kind of display has allowed Sony to fit a 5.7-inch panel in a phone that is as big as the 5.2-inch Xperia XZ1, which is pretty cool. And the screen looks great. It is bright, it is detailed, and it's colorful. It may have a slight bluish tint to it, but this can be corrected using the rich display settings menu. HDR video is supported and looks impressive with its extra punchy colors. As expected, we have Android Audio on the XZ2 out of the box. Sony's custom user interface has a familiar look and has a stock feel to it. It is light and customizable, while power user features like split-screen multitasking are available for those who need them. Sony has also added a thing or two of its own. For example, there's a one-handed mode which shrinks the display to a fraction of its size for better reach. And when you lift the phone in standby, the screen will briefly light up, showing you the time and pending notifications. But it would have been really nice if we also had a gesture to pull down the notifications panel. Another additional feature is the so-called dynamic vibration. Basically, the phone uses a special type of vibration motor, and when you play games, the XZ2 provides feedback similar to that of a PlayStation controller, shaking in your hand. And speaking of gaming, I tried playing some of the heaviest games that I know of, and they all ran perfectly on the Xperia XZ2. It seems that the Snapdragon 845 chip inside it can handle anything you throw at it. The phone is also pretty fast with its day-to-day operations, though multitasking could have been better. It is not uncommon for an application to start from scratch if I come back to it from the app switcher. Storage stands at 64GB built-in, which is now the norm for high-end smartphones. But in reality, you get only a fraction of that space, since the operating system occupies a huge chunk of it. The camera on the Xperia XZ2 is pretty much the same motion eye module that we had on the Xperia XZ1, but it brings a few additions. It now has support for HDR video recording, which would be able to capture more detail in very dark and very bright areas, instead of rendering these completely black or white. We're also getting the option to record super slow motion video at up to 1080p resolution. Regular photos taken with this camera do look very good. There is sufficient detail and colors are pretty accurate. But while performance has improved over the XZ1, do not expect this camera to perform better than the Galaxy S9 or an iPhone 8. Compared to these two rivals, the Xperia XZ2 takes photos with more noise, especially in low light. Videos can be taken at up to 4K resolution and they do look great. Even though the camera doesn't have optical stabilization, its software stabilization does a good job at keeping the frame steady. We also recorded a whole bunch of 4K HDR videos with the Xperia XZ2. It turns out that the effect makes a huge difference, especially in the right conditions. For example, I took an impressive looking clip during sunset. But HDR video has its downside. For example, the frame is cropped so you're not using the camera's entire field of view, and in low light there is noticeably more noise. No less importantly, HDR videos can only be enjoyed on an HDR compatible device. So while they may look great on your phone, they may not look as impressive if they're uploaded to Facebook or YouTube. With super slow motion videos, switching from 720p to 1080p resolution brings a welcome boost in quality. But the duration of the slow motion portion is cut in half. This makes capturing super slow motion clips at just the right moment even more difficult than before, though we have to admit that well-timed videos look very impressive. And lastly, the selfie camera. It is just an ordinary 5-megapixel shooter that takes decent photos in daylight, but struggles in low-light situations. On the other hand, 1080p videos taken with the front camera do look very detailed and are very well stabilized, again thanks to Sony's image stabilization. Speaking of the front-facing camera, it can now be used to make 3D scans of your face with Sony's 3D Creator feature. The scans can actually be 3D printed or shared on Facebook. Too bad that scanning yourself with the front camera is a bit tricky when you have to stand still and move the camera around at the same time. As we already mentioned, the Xperia XZ2 does not have a headphone jack, which is disappointing. All you get is a dongle that plugs in the USB-C port, allowing you to connect your wired earphones. What Sony hasn't removed are the front-facing stereo speakers. The sound they produce is loud and balanced, but there is next to no bass. And finally, the Xperia XZ2 does not disappoint with its battery life. I could easily get 2 days of moderate usage out of it, probably because the phone consumes very little power in standby. But as they say, your mileage may vary, depending on how you're using the phone. An hour of intensive gaming, for example, can easily drain 30% of its battery. Charging is relatively quick, but only until the battery gets to about 60%. Then it gradually slows down and a full charge takes over 2 hours, which is slower compared to other high-end phones. For those who want to take advantage of it, wireless charging is available on the Xperia XZ2. So in conclusion, we'd say that the Sony Xperia XZ2 is a pretty good phone. If you like it, just get it, we won't try to stop you. There are many things to like about it, including its beautiful screen and fast performance. The battery life is great and the design overhaul is refreshing. But on the other hand, Sony is pricing the Xperia XZ2 to compete with the Galaxy S9, a phone that takes better photos, that has better speakers, that has a headphone jack, and that is ultimately better in many other ways, except when it comes to battery life maybe. So yeah, that is definitely something to have in mind, and thank you for watching guys. Check us out at phonearena.com to learn more about the Sony Xperia XZ2 and subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss a video.